They laughed at him. The young elite soldiers, proud, tough, invincible, stood in a tight circle at the military base gym, smirking as the old man walked past. His faded uniform jacket hung loosely over his thin frame, the fabric worn, his medals dulled with time. But what caught their attention wasn't his medals, it was the old tattoo on his forearm. A shaky eagle, inked decades ago, barely visible now beneath wrinkled skin. Nice artwork, Grandpa. One of them chuckled, flexing his muscular arm covered in fresh, intricate tattoos. That thing belongs in a museum. The old man, Sergeant Raymond Cole, didn't respond. He just smiled faintly, the kind of smile that holds 1,000 memories, and continued walking toward the shooting range. He'd seen this before, the arrogance of youth, the blindness that comes before wisdom. He could have told them stories that would freeze their hearts, but he didn't. Some lessons life teaches only when it's ready. One of the younger Delta operators, Staff Sergeant Mike Danner, whispered to his buddy, "Man, what's an old-timer like him doing here anyway? Can he even hold a rifle without shaking?" The laughter echoed down the hall. That night, a storm rolled over the base. The wind howled, rain hammered the windows, and the men gathered in the mess hall, restless. They were due for a classified operation the next morning, a high-risk hostage rescue in the mountains. But before they could head out, the base commander walked in, followed by someone unexpected, General William Harkins, a legend in the military world. Every man in that room stood straight, their laughter replaced by silent awe. The general was known as the Iron Wolf. Tough as nails, no nonsense, and respected by every soldier who'd ever worn the uniform. He looked around the room, his eyes sharp as steel, then stopped on Sergeant Cole. "Raymond," he said, his voice deep, commanding yet warm. "Good to see you again." A murmur spread through the room. "They know each other?" Cole saluted, his hand trembling slightly. "Didn't think I'd see the day, sir." The general grinned. "Neither did I, old friend." The young Delta operators exchanged puzzled glances. Mike Danner leaned toward his teammate and whispered, "Wait, friend." General Harkins turned toward the group. "I hear some of you boys had a few laughs at Sergeant Cole's expense today." His tone shifted, quiet, dangerous. No one spoke. "Maybe you thought his tattoo was funny. Maybe you thought he didn't belong here. But you should know something about that ink before you judge it." He walked closer, rolling up his sleeve. The room went dead silent. On the general's forearm was the same tattoo, the same rough eagle etched by hand, faded with time. "This," he said, holding up his arm, "wasn't a decoration. It was a mark of brotherhood. Back in '73, deep in the jungles of Cambodia, we didn't have fancy gear or backup. It was just us. A handful of scared young men trying to bring our brothers home." He turned his gaze toward Cole. "Ray here was one of the bravest among us. We got this tattoo together the night we swore none of us would ever leave a man behind." The room was silent except for the hum of the lights. Rain pounded outside like distant artillery. The young soldiers lowered their heads. Cole's eyes glistened, the memories flooding back. The smell of gunpowder, the cries of the wounded, the sound of helicopters chopping through the humid air. "We lost a lot of good men," he whispered. "But we made it out because we believed in each other." The general's voice grew heavy. "Ray saved my life, took a bullet in the leg dragging me out of an ambush. If it weren't for him, there'd be no General Harkins. So before any of you laugh at a man's scars or his ink, remember that it might be written in blood." Mike Danner stepped forward, his face pale. "Sir, I didn't know. We didn't mean." "I know," the general interrupted softly. "You didn't know. That's why you listen before you judge." He looked around the room. Every wrinkle, every scar, every faded tattoo. It tells a story you haven't earned the right to mock yet. The air felt different after that, heavier, but purer somehow. Later that evening, as the rain eased, Sergeant Cole walked alone to the memorial wall at the edge of the base. His reflection flickered in the polished stone, surrounded by the engraved names of fallen comrades. He placed his hand over one name, Harris J., and whispered, We kept our promise, brother. Behind him, boots crunched on gravel. It was Mike. Sir, he said quietly, not sure what else to call him. I wanted to apologize. Cole turned, his weathered eyes kind. You don't owe me that, son. Just promise me one thing, that you'll carry your pride with humility. Because pride without respect will get men killed. Mike nodded, his throat tight. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small notebook and said, Can I ask what the tattoo means? The eagle, why that? Cole smiled faintly. Because an eagle flies highest in the storm. Reminds us to rise above fear when everything's falling apart. The next morning, the Delta team geared up for their mission. Cole watched from the sidelines, his old heart swelling with pride as the men moved with renewed focus and unity. Before boarding the chopper, Mike looked back, gave a crisp salute, and shouted, For the Eagles, sir! Cole saluted back, his eyes misty. For the Eagles. Hours later, the mission succeeded flawlessly. Every hostage rescued, every man returned home. When the team landed, the first thing Mike did was roll up his sleeve. A small, rough eagle freshly inked on his arm. Thought I'd earn it the right way, he said, his voice trembling. Cole laughed softly, his weathered hand resting on Mike's shoulder. Now you wear it with honor. Weeks later, at a ceremony, General Harkins addressed the crowd. His voice cracked just slightly when he spoke of the bond between generations, the torch that must be passed, the lessons that must never die. We live in an age of technology and strength, he said. But courage, real courage, doesn't age. It's carved into your soul, not your skin. As the men stood in salute, the old veteran's tattoo caught the sunlight, a faint shimmer on faded skin. To most, it was just ink, but to those who knew, it was a living memory, a symbol of honor that time could never erase. And that day, no one laughed, because they finally understood. They understood that greatness isn't loud, it doesn't brag, it doesn't need to prove itself. It simply is, carried quietly by those who've lived through the fire and come back stronger. So if you ever see an old veteran with a shaky step and a faded tattoo, don't mock what you don't understand. That mark might hold more courage, more pain, and more sacrifice than a lifetime of words could tell. Because sometimes the bravest stories are the ones written on skin and remembered in silence. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories of honor, sacrifice, and redemption. Tell us in the comments, what does respect mean to you? And never forget, heroes don't always wear medals. Sometimes they just wear time.